You were broken, you were left behind. They laughed as they walked away, thinking you'd crumble into dust. They thought they had drained you of every last ounce of strength, that they had buried you so deep under the weight of their betrayal that you'd never rise again. They expected your silence, your surrender. They expected you to chase them, to beg, to plead for another chance, but they didn't know. Oh, they didn't know what was waiting in the shadows of your suffering. At first, you almost gave them what they wanted. You felt it, didn't you? The tightening in your chest, the sinking feeling in your gut, the whisper of defeat creeping into your mind. You replayed their words, their laughter, the way they turned their backs without hesitation. You asked yourself, was I really that worthless? You stared at the ceiling in the dark, suffocating under the weight of self-doubt, replaying every mistake, every moment you thought you should have been stronger. Nights turned into weeks, weeks blurred into months. The world moved on, but you were stuck in the wreckage of what they left behind. You saw their lives carrying on without you, thriving, laughing, celebrating as if you had never existed. It burned, didn't it? It cut through your soul like a blade. They thought they had won. They thought you would stay down. They thought you would accept the role of the forgotten, the discarded, the weak. But something was brewing inside you. It started as a whisper, buried beneath the weight of your pain. A question, a defiance, a tiny ember, refusing to be snuffed out. What if I don't stay down? At first it seemed impossible, like a delusion of a broken man, a foolish dream. But that ember began to spread, turning into a flicker, a spark, an undeniable force clawing its way out of the darkness. You stopped looking at the door they walked out of. You stopped checking if they would turn around, because finally you understood they were never coming back. And that was your greatest gift. The moment you let them go was the moment you felt something you hadn't felt in a long time. Power. Not the kind of power that comes from validation, from being accepted, from being chosen. This was something different. This was the kind of power that comes from destruction. The destruction of the weak version of you that once needed them. You sat in that silence, in that darkness, and you made a decision. Not out of spite, not out of desperation, but out of something far deeper. You decided to become something they could never ignore. You decided that they would regret ever thinking you'd beg, because one day, they would be the ones begging you. They thought you needed them. They thought without their approval, you'd collapse. They believed they were your lifeline, that their presence was the only thing keeping you afloat. They smiled as they walked away, convinced that without their validation, you'd wither into nothing. But what they never understood was that the fire inside you wasn't fueled by their approval. It was born from something far deeper, something they had no control over. Still, in those first moments, the betrayal felt like death. It wasn't just the loss of people. It was the loss of certainty, of trust, of everything you thought was real. You gave them loyalty, and they gave you silence. You gave them time, effort, love, and in return, they handed you a cold, indifferent goodbye. No explanations, no remorse, just a simple, effortless departure, as if you were nothing more than an afterthought. You remember the moment it hit you, the moment you realized they weren't coming back. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't some grand revelation. It was quiet. Maybe it was an unanswered message, a conversation that never picked up again, or the way their eyes didn't light up when they saw you anymore. Maybe it was when you overheard them laughing with the same energy they once shared with you. But now, you were absent from the picture. At first you tried to rationalize it. Maybe you did something wrong. Maybe you weren't good enough. Maybe if you had just been a little better, a little smarter, a little more likable, they would have stayed. So you replayed every conversation, every interaction, picking apart your own words, trying to find the flaw that made them walk away. You blamed yourself because, in some twisted way, it was easier than accepting the truth. The truth? They never planned to stay. They were never built to last in your story. Their presence was temporary, and when they saw no more use for you, they moved on without hesitation. Not because you were lacking, not because you weren't enough, but because they never valued you the way you valued them. You were playing with loyalty. They were playing with convenience. That realization crushed you. The weight of it settled in your chest like a stone. It wasn't just sadness, it was humiliation. The sickening thought that you had poured your heart into people who saw you as replaceable. The unbearable sting of knowing you would have done anything for them, but they wouldn't have lifted a finger for you. And in that pain, the darkness crept in. The voice that told you to give up, that asked, "What's the point?" You were exhausted, mentally, emotionally, spiritually drained. The weight of rejection, of loneliness, of feeling unseen and unworthy, it clung to you, dragging you further into the abyss. You started to believe the lie they left you with, that you were insignificant, that your absence meant nothing. For a while, you let the darkness take over. You stopped showing up, stopped trying, stopped believing in yourself. Why fight when the world had already decided you weren't enough? Why push forward when every sign pointed to failure? And that's exactly what they expected. They thought you'd break under the pressure. They thought you'd drown in your own doubt, that you'd watch them from the shadows, wishing you could still be a part of their world. But they underestimated you, because in that silence, something inside you refused to die. It was buried beneath the pain, suffocating under the weight of rejection, but it was still there, a pulse, a whisper, a single, unrelenting thought. I am not finished. You weren't ready to see it yet. You weren't ready to rise. But deep down, a shift had begun. You didn't know it at the time, but your suffering wasn't an end. It was a rebirth, because no matter how much they tried to break you, they forgot one thing. Pressure doesn't just destroy, it creates diamonds. And you were about to become unbreakable. The world moved on, but you were still standing in the wreckage, staring at the empty space where they used to be. It was quiet now. No more conversations, no more invitations, no more laughter echoing in rooms you once belonged to. Just silence, heavy, suffocating silence. You had never felt so alone. At first it was unbearable. The absence of noise, the absence of movement. It was like being trapped in a void where time no longer existed. You used to fill your days with them, their energy, their validation, their presence. And now, it was just you, alone with your thoughts, your regrets, your shame, alone with the realization that the people you once called everything had proven they could live without you. You told yourself it didn't matter. You lied to yourself, saying you were better off, that you didn't need them either. But the weight in your chest told a different story, because it wasn't just their absence, it was what their absence meant. It meant they had made a choice, and they chose to leave you behind. That was the sting you couldn't shake. Not just the loneliness, but the humiliation of knowing you weren't enough for them to stay. You replayed the moments over and over again. The last conversations, the last glances, the subtle shifts in tone before everything fell apart. Were you too much? Were you not enough? What was it about you that made them walk away so easily? The questions consumed you, circling in your mind like vultures, picking apart what was left of your self-worth. But in the silence, something was waking up inside you. It wasn't loud. It wasn't immediate. It was a whisper, almost too quiet to hear at first. A small, stubborn voice buried beneath the weight of rejection. A voice that said, "What if this isn't the end?" At first you ignored it. You had spent so long believing the worst about yourself that the idea of something greater seemed ridiculous. But the voice didn't leave. It grew stronger, louder. It wasn't asking anymore, it was demanding. It was telling you to wake up. Because what if this wasn't about them at all? What if their absence wasn't a punishment, but a test? What if every betrayal, every rejection, every moment of humiliation was leading you to something bigger? What if you weren't meant to be part of their world, because you were destined to build your own? That thought was dangerous. It was disruptive. It went against everything you had believed in your weakest moment. but it was also intoxicating. For the first time in a long time, you weren't thinking about them. You weren't wondering what they were doing, or if they missed you, or if they regretted leaving. For the first time, you were thinking about you. That silence that once felt like a graveyard, it was starting to feel like something else, a training ground, a forge, a place where the old broken version of you was being stripped away, and something stronger was taking its place. You weren't healed yet. You weren't whole yet, but deep inside, you knew. This loneliness wasn't going to destroy you. It was going to transform you. And when the time came, you wouldn't just rise. You would return unrecognizable. Something snapped inside you. It wasn't a dramatic moment. No lightning strike, no cinematic revelation. Just a quiet, undeniable shift. A realization so simple yet so dangerous. You were done waiting, done hoping, done begging. You had spent too much time staring at closed doors, waiting for apologies that would never come. Too many nights rewriting the past in your mind, trying to fix something that was never meant to last. But now the weight of it all dropped. The desperation, the regret, the need for closure, it burned away in an instant. Because the truth hit you like a freight train. You don't chase ghosts. You don't beg for what walked away. You rise. That thought alone changed everything. For the first time, you weren't thinking about them. You weren't thinking about proving yourself, about revenge, about making them miss you. That was the old you, the one who needed validation, who craved acceptance, who thought their presence was the key to your worth. That version of you was dead. Something else had taken its place, a hunger, a fire, a raw, unshakable determination that had been buried beneath your pain for far too long. And now it was awake. You looked around at your life, the mess, the stagnation, the wasted time, and you made a decision, not out of anger, not out of spite, but out of something greater. It was time to become unrecognizable. You knew it wouldn't be easy. The journey ahead wasn't built for the weak, for the desperate, for those still clinging to the past. No, this path was for the relentless, for those who understood that success wasn't about proving others wrong. It was about proving yourself right. You stopped making excuses, stopped waiting for motivation, for the perfect moment, for someone to come and save you, because no one was coming. No one owed you a damn thing. And that was the most liberating truth you had ever faced. So you started quietly. No announcements, no seeking approval, just work. At first, it was brutal. Waking up earlier, cutting out distractions, sacrificing comfort for progress, pushing through exhaustion, through doubt, through every whisper of weakness, trying to pull you back into the grave of your old self. But you didn't stop. You couldn't stop, because for the first time in your life, you weren't moving for them. You weren't chasing someone's love, someone's validation, someone's recognition. You were chasing greatness, and that changed everything. The old you would have quit. The old you would have made excuses. The old you would have looked for a way out when the pain became unbearable. But that version of you no longer exists. The moment you decided to rise, you burned your escape routes, shattered the safety nets, and locked yourself into a mindset most people wouldn't survive. You became obsessed. You became relentless. It started small, waking up earlier, pushing your body past its limits, cutting out distractions, eliminating every weakness, every indulgence that made you soft. The things that once brought you comfort, gone. You traded them for progress, because comfort never built empires. Comfort never forged warriors. Comfort never created legends. And it hurt. God, it hurt. The hunger, the exhaustion, the loneliness of walking a path no one else understood. Sleepless nights, sweat-soaked shirts, isolation. Your body screamed for rest. Your mind begged for relief. But you didn't stop. You couldn't stop. Because every rep, every late night, every sacrifice was a debt being paid. A debt owed to the future version of you who refused to live in mediocrity. People didn't understand. They called you crazy, said you were taking it too far, that you needed balance. But what they never realized was that this wasn't just about success. This was survival. This was redemption. This was about proving to yourself that you would never again be at the mercy of anyone else's choices. You trained when no one was watching, worked when others were sleeping, built yourself in silence while the world carried on, oblivious to the monster you were becoming. And every day you felt the shift. Your mind hardened, your body adapted, your spirit became untouchable. The nights were long, the setbacks were brutal, the sacrifices were endless. But there was one thing that kept you going when everything screamed at you to stop. You were never going back. Never again would you be the person waiting for approval. Never again would you need to be chosen. Never again would you let weakness decide your future. And the best part? They had no idea what was coming. They don't recognize you anymore. But that's because you're not the same. The person they left behind, gone. The version of you that once begged, once doubted, once clung to people who never deserved you, dead and buried. What stands in their place is something unshakable, a force of nature forged in discipline, in fire, in solitude. At first they don't notice. They still see you through the lens of the past. They assume you're still waiting, still hoping, still weak. But then they hear whispers. They see glimpses. Something's different. There's a new energy in your eyes, a quiet power in your presence. And then it hits them. You're not waiting anymore. You walk differently now. Speak differently. You carry yourself with an unspoken authority that doesn't need validation. You've stepped into a power they never thought you'd find. And the most terrifying part, you did it without them. Your silence is louder than their word. Your presence is heavier than their absence. You don't flinch at their return. Don't react to their sudden interest, because you've outgrown them, outgrown their games, their opinions, their entire existence in your life. You see the shift in their eyes. The moment they realize the control they once had over you is gone. The moment they see that their absence was never your downfall, but your awakening. And now they're the ones who feel small, the ones who doubted you, the ones who left you, the ones who thought you'd crumble without them. They're watching, they're whispering, they're wondering how they ever underestimated you. But you don't stop, you don't slow down, because this was never about them. This was never about proving them wrong. This was always about proving yourself right. You are no longer just surviving, you are dominating. And the best part? You're just getting started. At first, they dismissed it. They called it luck, a coincidence, a temporary streak of success that would eventually fade. They told themselves you'd slip, that you'd come back down, that life would humble you, because that's what they needed to believe. But deep down, they felt it, they saw it, the shift, the power, the undeniable force of your rise. And no matter how much they tried to ignore it, they couldn't escape the truth. You weren't the same person they left behind. You were something else now, something sharper, stronger, hungrier. Your work started to speak louder than their doubts. Your results silenced every insult, every doubt, every smug prediction of your failure. The things they once mocked you for, the mindset, the discipline, the obsession, those were the very things that made you unstoppable. They heard your name in conversations, saw glimpses of you in places they never expected. People started mentioning you, not as a cautionary tale, but as a force to be reckoned with. And that's when the fear set in. Because if you could rise without them, if you could succeed after everything they did to break you, what did that say about them? The same people who once pitied you now envied you. The ones who wrote you off now watched you with unease. Because you weren't just succeeding, you were surpassing. The gap between who they thought you were and who you had become, it was getting wider. And they had two choices: admit they were wrong, or pretend they never doubted you in the first place. But you didn't care. Their recognition was never the goal. You were too busy building, growing, conquering. The world was shifting in your favor, and nothing, not their words, not their doubts, not their presence, could stop what was coming next. Because this was only the beginning. At first, they whispered your name with mockery, with doubt, with certainty that you would fail. But now they whisper it with fear. Because you didn't just rise, you exploded. You became something they never saw coming, something they can't ignore. You were once the forgotten one, the underestimated one, the one they thought would fade into irrelevance. But now you are everywhere. Your success isn't just a moment, it's a movement. People are talking, watching, admiring. They see the fire in your eyes, the strength in your presence, the power in your silence. And the ones who once dismissed you, they're the most afraid of all, because deep down, they know they had a chance to stand beside you. They had a chance to believe in you, to walk with you, to grow with you. But they didn't. And now they are outsiders looking in. They see the way others respect you, the way doors open for you, the way you command rooms without saying a word. And it terrifies them. Because your existence is a reminder of everything they lack. The discipline, the resilience, the ability to rise when the world tried to bury you. And the worst part, they don't know what to do about it. They can't stop you. They can't control you. They can't bring you back down because you've outgrown their world completely. So instead, they watch, they whisper. They wonder if it's too late to align with you before you're too far gone. But you already know the answer to that. Because the version of you that once sought their approval, their validation, their acceptance, that person is gone. And the one standing in their place, the one they now fear, that person doesn't look back. They never thought this day would come. The same people who walked away, who doubted you, who laughed behind your back, they return. And they don't come back with the same arrogance, the same dismissive tone, the same certainty that you need them. They come back with carefully chosen word, fake smile, sudden admiration. They rewrite history, pretend they were always in your corner. They say they knew you had it in you, that they were just giving you space, that they always believed in you. But you remember. You remember everything. You remember the silence when you needed support, the laughter when you struggled, the way they turned their backs when you had nothing to offer. You remember the rejection, the loneliness, the feeling of standing alone in the storm. And now the tables have turned. They thought you'd beg for them, thought you'd reach out, thought you'd need their validation. But here they are, standing in front of you, eyes filled with regret, voices laced with desperation. They're the ones begging now, begging to be part of your success, begging for a second chance, begging to stand beside the very person they abandoned. But they don't realize they lost that chance a long time ago. Because you are no longer the person they left behind. You don't chase, you don't explain, you don't hold on to people who let go of you. You don't seek revenge. You don't have to. Your success is enough. Your evolution is enough. The fact that they have to stand outside, watching you thrive, is enough. So you don't argue. You don't remind them of their betrayal. You don't waste energy proving a point. You simply keep walking because you have outgrown them and you are never looking back. There was a time when you craved their approval, when you measured your worth by their word, their recognition, their validation, when you thought success only mattered if they saw it, if they acknowledged it, if they finally admitted they were wrong about you. But not anymore, because now, standing at the peak of everything they swore you'd never reach, you see the truth? You never needed them. You never did. Every doubt they placed in your mind, every moment of rejection, every door slammed in your face, it was never about you. It was about them, their own insecurities, their own limitation, their own fear that someone like you could rise, could break free, could become something greater than they ever imagined. And now, as they watch from the sideline, still hoping for some sign that you care, that you need their validation, you give them nothing, because the ultimate power is indifference. You don't need their apologies. You don't need their recognition. You don't need their acceptance. Your success speaks for itself. You built this life with your own hand, your own sweat, your own relentless will, and that means no one can take it from you. You are free, free from their opinions, their expectations, their judgment, free from the weight of trying to prove yourself to people who were never meant to understand your journey. And in that freedom, you find the greatest victory of all. Not just success, not just power, peace. Because when you truly know your worth, when you no longer seek approval from those who once denied you, when you rise so high that their opinions become whispers lost in the wind, you become untouchable. There was a time when you were weak, a time when you settled, when you apologized for taking up space, when you let others dictate your worth. You remember that version of yourself, the one who hesitated, who doubted, who begged. But that person no longer exists, because now when you look in the mirror, you don't see the same reflection. You don't see the timid eyes, the slouched shoulders, the desperate need for approval. You see fire. You see power. You see someone unstoppable. The old you begged. The new you commands. The old you waited to be chosen. The new you builds their own throne. The old you feared rejection. The new you embraces it as fuel. And now, as you stand face to face with the past, you realize this was never about proving anyone else wrong. It was about proving yourself right. It was about shattering every limitation, rewriting every story that painted you as less than, and stepping fully into the force you were always meant to be. The old you might have looked at this moment with disbelief, wondering how you got here, questioning if you were truly worthy of this power. But the new you doesn't ask for permission. The new you doesn't hesitate. The new you owns it. And the final lesson you take from this confrontation, you will never go back. Because once you taste the life of the unstoppable, once you feel what it's like to move without fear, to walk without chains, to exist without apology, there is no return. You don't just survive anymore. You dominate. This is your final message to them, to the ones who laughed, the ones who left, the ones who doubted, betrayed, and dismissed you like you were nothing, the ones who thought they had power over you, who mistook your kindness for weakness, who assumed you would always stay beneath them. You had your chance, a chance to stand beside me, a chance to believe in me before the world did, a chance to be part of something unstoppable. But you threw it away. Now you don't get to come back. You don't get access. You don't get a seat at this table. Now you watch. You watch from the sidelines as I rise higher, as I dominate spaces you once tried to keep me out of. You watch as the person you underestimated becomes the name you can't ignore. You thought you could break me, but all you did was build me. Every doubt you placed in my head became fuel. Every time you turned your back, you only forced me to stand on my own. Every rejection, every insult, every moment you wanted me to quit only made me hungrier. So here I stand, stronger than ever, and you are nothing more than a spectator. This is my final warning. You will never have access to me again. No apologies will change it. No excuses will undo it. No sudden admiration will reopen the door. You had your chance, and now you live with the regret of losing me forever. This is it, the final moment. Every battle, every scar, every sleepless night, it all led to this. You are no longer chasing, no longer proving, no longer waiting for permission, because the truth, the throne was always yours. They tried to convince you otherwise, tried to break you, belittle you, make you forget who you were. But that was their biggest mistake, thinking they had the power to define you. You never needed their approval. You never needed their validation. You needed the pain. You needed the rejection. You needed to be left in the dark so you could learn to create your own light. And now, you don't beg. You don't beg for chances. You take them. You don't beg for opportunities. You create them. You don't beg for a place at the table. You build your own empire. You don't just rise. You dominate. And the ones who doubted you, the ones who thought you would break, they will never forget your name. Because you are no longer a footnote in their story. You are the author of your own. This is your moment. This is your legacy. The throne was always yours. Now take it. Now it's your turn. Everything you just heard, everything you just felt. This is not just a story. This is a mirror reflecting the power that has always lived inside you. This is your moment. No more waiting, no more doubting, no more asking for permission. Because the truth, no one is coming to save you. No one is going to hand you the life you deserve. No one is going to beg you to rise. That choice is yours. And if you're still breathing, if there's still fire in your chest, if there's still a single part of you that refuses to be defeated, then it's time to let go of the past, time to silence the doubt, time to step into the person you were always meant. They thought you'd break, they thought you'd beg, they thought you'd stay small forever. Prove them wrong, not with words, not with apologies, with action, with dominance, with undeniable success. This world is not for the weak. It does not reward hesitation. It does not bow to those who sit in silence hoping for a miracle. It belongs to those who take what they deserve. And you were not made to be forgotten. You were made to rise. This is your moment. Now go and take it.